Do you study a lot, put in hours, put in effort, studying, hoping for an 8 or a 9 just to get a 5? One of the complaints I always get is no matter how hard I study, I still get bad grades. Well, by the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly why you're getting bad grades despite studying a lot. And by the way, at the time of filming this video, there's 79 days left until the start of the GCSE and A-level exam season. And so if you're not happy about where you are academically, you need to dedicate some minutes to watching this whole video. There's no more time to waste, so if you want to get the top grades, make sure you watch this whole video. Anyways, let me tell you a story about me in year 10. You see, year 9 was easy. All I had to do to get decent grades was just go through the simple textbook that the school gave us, and I would make notes on them. And since the tests weren't external exams, they were barely a challenge. But then when I reached year 10 and I started my GCSEs, I got lost. All of a sudden, what I thought was studying was no longer effective. I remember one physics unit test specifically. Now for context, physics was and still is one of my favorite subjects. And so I enjoyed it and I did pretty well in it compared to other subjects. And so when it came time to revise for this specific unit test, I told myself, let me do what I've always been doing. So I pulled up the AQA GCSE physics textbook, I went through it and I made some notes. And then when I finished making notes on the content, I told myself, you know what, I'm ready. And so I walk into class the next day and I do the test. And I told myself, you know what, it went pretty well. But then the moment I got the result of the test back was the moment that changed my academic journey forever. After being 100% sure that I was ready to smash the test, I ended up getting a 5. Now you might say, that's not that bad. But I was genuinely convinced that I was either getting an 8 or a 9. Physics was my favorite subject. It's the one I liked the most and it's the one that I did the best at. And so I couldn't help but think that if I can't even get a 6 in physics, how am I gonna get a 9 in English, a subject that I don't really enjoy that much? But then I told myself, you know what, maybe it was just a bad day. And so when it was time for the next unit test, a chemistry unit test, the same exact thing happened again. I told myself that this wasn't gonna cut it. And that's when my academic journey completely changed. I realized that my revision was just not effective. And so I did everything that I can to figure out how to revise effectively. And I realized that my lack of success in GCSEs can be narrowed down to 2 issues. But before I tell you what they are, if you're a GCSE or A-level student that wants to get the top grades with only an hour of studying per day and no tutors required, then you need to listen up. Over the past 2 years, I've helped tens of thousands of students just like you make that jump from studying a lot per day and not really seeing any results to only needing an hour of studying per day and getting the top grades. Now I've compiled everything that you need from step A to Z to get the top grades in your GCSEs or A-levels in the ultimate guide to acing your GCSEs and A-levels. You firstly get the video program. It's a comprehensive guide that covers everything that you need to get the top grades. Everything from how to craft efficient studying techniques for each subject, a flashcards masterclass, a notes masterclass, a doing practice questions masterclass, and also lessons and modules about often overlooked factors like external revision and the lifestyle optimization that you need to do to get the top grades. Now we also offer a new service, a personalized, science-based study plan just for you. All you need to do is tell us what subjects you're taking and we'll create an efficient study plan suitable just for you. You don't need to waste time and effort with trial and error trying to figure out what studying technique works. We'll just give you the studying techniques. In fact, exams are just around the corner. There's no time to waste. And don't take it from me. Look at these students that have taken the program and found insane benefits. So if you want to get the top grades in your GCSEs or A-levels with only an hour of studying per day and no tutor required, then click the first link in the description. Now back to the video. And so what were the 2 issues that were holding me back from getting the top grades even though I was studying? The first one is very simple, yet very important. And it was, I was studying very passively. I wasn't doing any active revision. Now I've talked about active versus passive revision many times on my channel, but I've always briefly talked about what they are. And so I wanted to take some time out in this video to actually explain what they are because most people still don't know how to differentiate between them. Passive revision is just convincing yourself that you're revising when you're not actually, while active revision is genuinely engaging with the information and doing something with it. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're revising biology, and so you pick up the textbook and you start highlighting information that you think is useful. Sure, in the first 10 seconds you might be engaged, but there's nothing holding your brain back from just thinking about something else and getting distracted. You've probably experienced this before, where you're reading something and then you realize that for the past half a page or so, you weren't actually reading it, you were thinking about something else. And so you go back, you start reading again, and it's a whole cycle that keeps on repeating. You're not actually getting anywhere. That's passive revision. But if you actually want to learn information, then you have to use active revision techniques. Instead of relying on just reading and highlighting, you actually have to engage with information. Let me give you an example. Instead of just reading the textbook and highlighting what you think is important, which is going to be at least 75% of the textbook because it's based on the specification, so highlighting it is just useless. You can take those points that are in the spec that are important and turn them into your own summarized notes. All of a sudden, instead of just aimlessly highlighting, you're actually forcing your brain to look at the information, assess whether it's important or not, and then reword it into your own words, which means you're engaging with the information. Your brain is actually doing something, and so there's no leeway for you to get distracted. Your brain gets distracted when it's bored, not when it's engaged. But you don't only have to make notes. You could turn that information into flashcards. Or you could try blurting. There's so many active studying techniques out there that there's no excuse for us not to be using them. Now in year 10, when I was revising for that physics unit test, all I was doing was just going through content and making notes. Now you might be saying, Yusuf, you literally just said that making notes is active. You're right, making notes in your own words is active. You're taking that information from the textbook or a YouTube video or whatever, and you're putting it in your own words. You're summarizing it. But what I was doing, and what most people do, is that they just sit there and copy the textbook word for word into their own notes. What's the issue with that? We're not engaging with the information. I could do that and not even be thinking about the subject. I could be thinking about something else because it's just passive. Now that was the first mistake I made that was preventing me from getting the top grades. Just to summarize, study actively, don't study passively. Now the second mistake I was making in year 10 was that I wasn't applying the information that I was learning. I'll quickly use this Venn diagram that illustrates the 3 elements that each subject is based on. You can download it completely for free alongside a guide on how to use it in the second link in the description. Now let's use physics as an example, since it was the first subject that humbled me. Where do you think it goes on this Venn diagram? I would say it goes right here. It's a blend of problem solving and memorization with a slightly bigger emphasis on the problem solving elements. But you see, even if I was making notes actively or making flashcards, I'm still only focusing on the memorization side. I wasn't actually applying any of the information. And so I wasn't catering for the problem solving element. And like I always say, applying the information is literally half of the learning process. And so it was no wonder that I wasn't getting 9s because I wasn't doing half of the learning process. And so you might ask, how do you apply the information? Well, it's very, very simple. You just do practice questions. It's not enough for you to just go through the content, even if you're doing that actively. You have to actually apply that information in the way that the examiner wants to see. Think about it. There's a million different questions that an examiner could ask you about a topic. Let's say cell biology, for example. However, exam boards tend to have some sort of patterns that they follow. And you only learn those patterns by exposing yourself to them as much as possible. You train your brain to recognize those patterns. So when you're actually sitting the exam, you know exactly what to expect. If you see a question, you know how to answer it. And so when I figured out exactly how to revise and then apply that information, that's when I turned that 5 in physics into a 9. Trust me, it's not hard. And if I can do it, so can you. And remember, there's only 79 days left until the start of the GCSE and A-level exam season. Time is running out. However, there's still enough time to jump up a couple of grades at least in every subject. And so if you want to guarantee those results, then click the first link in the description.